The painting of a scale model demands the same attention to precision as the care that went into the basic structure and detail. No matter if it's a razor-sharp line, a properly laid out soft-edge camouflage pattern, or even weathering, proper use of masking is the best and most direct route to a good scale result. For example, if the full-size fade between colors of a camouflage scheme is only 1.5 inches, or about 30 thousandths in 1/48 scale, then maybe freehanding it with an airbrush isn't the way to go, unless, of course, you just like the way an overly wide fade looks. Keep in mind that the masking techniques I will be discussing are aimed at air painting. Certainly the most common masking material is tape. When selecting a tape to use, you want to consider 3 basic characteristics: adhesive quality, thickness, and flexibility. A tape should stick well enough so that it stays put on the surfaces and over the curves that you're masking, yet not be difficult or destructive to remove. So a tape that would be used for a quick mask on a flat surface need not be as sticky or flexible as one used for a long-term painting routine over compound curves. Depending on the desired result, the thickness of the tape can be a factor. With the proper spraying technique, a thin tape edge will generally yield the sharpest line with a minimum chance of paint buildup. However, there are times when a thicker tape will be more suitable. When I want the ultimate sharp line, I use a thin tape like Tamiya tape, and if possible, I cut a fresh edge because rolls of tape are subject to bumps and dings that can put nicks into the edge. After the tape is in place, I give the edge a quick burnish to make sure the edge is down and to keep the edge as thin as possible. How you spray over the masked edge is as important as the mask itself. The spray is best applied directly over or at a slight angle away from the edge, thus the benefit of the thin tape. The paint over the edge goes on relatively dry. The first pass or two will provide all the necessary level of paint to seal the edge. In any case, you want to avoid flooding the edge with a heavy wet coat because you risk having the paint run under your mask. But more than that, you don't want to build up an inordinate thickness of paint that completely ruins the scale effect. This is especially important when using stencils and painting on markings. I think some modelers have visions of creating the Hoover Dam because they've had such poor luck with masking. Their technique is to first paint over the masked edge with the same underlying paint in an attempt to really seal off the edge. There are 2 problems with this technique. First, you build up too much paint at the edge, and second, you reduce the sharpness of the masked line, because when you pull the tape, you now have 2 edges. One left by the tape, and a less sharp edge where the new color borders the paint that was used to so-called seal the tape. Proper application of paint when using masks will eliminate the need for dam construction. Thicker tapes can be handy if you want to lay out a general camouflage pattern and then go over it later with a fine airbrush to soften the edge. In this case, the airbrush is angled a bit so that the paint catches the most prominent edge of the tape. This prevents any paint building up in a hard line against the tape, and in turn making it easy to seamlessly blend the final edge with the airbrush. Because of the height, thick tape can invite overspray and enhance the buildup of an overly thick edge of paint if the airbrush is held at the wrong angle, so I avoid using them for general masking on scale models. Tape flexibility can either be your friend or a frustration, depending on what you're trying to do. A long straight line will be easier to mask with a wider, less flexible tape, while a narrow, more flexible tape will be easier to use around curves. Frisket is a low-tack material supplied in sheets that can be easily cut into shapes. Scotch Magic Tape is similar in thickness, but with more adhesion. While neither of these materials is very flexible, the resulting trimmed edge is extremely thin and sharp. Material used for stencil cutters can also be used in a similar manner. For masking over paint with poor adhesive qualities, there are a number of low-tack materials such as Post-it products and artist tape. Unfortunately, these products are not very flexible, so their usefulness is limited. Adhesive foil like bare metal foil can be used to mask canopies. I cover this technique in my video on finishing aircraft canopies. Liquid masks are also available, but their ability to be precisely trimmed is very limited, and I rarely use them other than to quickly cover an area with difficult contours. You can also cut your own masks from paper and spray them with a low-tack adhesive like 3M's Artist Adhesive. There are several methods for masking a soft edge. One method is to simply raise the edge of the conventional mask off the surface. However, it is important to be consistent and raise the mask the same distance off the surface all the way around. When I've used this method in the past, I simply use a piece of fine cord under the mask at an equal distance from the edge. The cord needs to be far enough under the mask to not affect the fade. Care needs to be taken when painting to maintain a consistent angle over the edge of the mask to ensure a consistent fade. Another way to mask a soft edge is with reusable adhesive putty like blue tack. The material is rolled out into a rope-like shape and then run around the border of the area to be masked. You can carefully paint against this edge without any further masking, but my preferred method is to cut a mask from tape or vinyl. The mask is cut a bit short of the final outline. The rope of adhesive putty is then applied to the edge of the pre-cut mask. This way, the area that won't be painted is protected, leaving me to focus on maintaining a consistent angle with the airbrush. With either of these techniques, the width of the gradient area is governed by the distance the edge is raised from the surface. In order to create a consistent fade with the first technique, it's necessary to evenly raise the edge of the mask. With the second technique, it's best to have the putty rolled out to a fairly consistent diameter, so that the prominent portion of the curve overlapping the area to be painted is basically the same height all around the mask. When painting multiple colors, try and paint the darker color over the lighter color to minimize the thickness of paint at the border. And depending on the paint you're using, you might be able to lightly color sand the area of demarcation in order to blend the surface together even further. Finally, handheld cardstock is a very quick and useful method for masking or shielding areas that you want to fade. Cut into shapes like this, it can be useful in delicate forms of weathering, providing more precision than available freehand. Many times painting a model is more about masking than about painting.